Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Bennun here with Israeli News Live in our follow-up broadcast about the war in Israel. Netanyahu here declaring war here just some, dozen hours or so after Hamas launched an unprecedented attack on Israel. An attack that has been the most coordinated effort ever seen in the Middle East against Israel by such a relatively small faction of fighters that now seem to be more armed than any other faction in the Middle East there. You know, in fact, if you begin to look at some of the imagery coming out, like in this case right here, the paratroopers that were flying in overhead, Hamas militant fighters coming in to slaughter Israeli civilians. And if it wasn't only that, we've had multiple other carnage scenes happening in Israel, even the taking over of the base there. By the way, we did warn in the beginning some graphic images that you would be seeing in here. And of course, the barrage continues to happen inside of Israel even tonight. And everybody, of course, the whole world beginning to rally around Israel in these latest developments as more and more missiles fly in, and of course more and more people being concerned about this horrendous attack that Hamas was able to carry out on Israeli soil relatively with Israel completely asleep, or at least the IDF. And in fact, it took nearly 8 hours for the IDF to respond to the pleas and cries of the citizens of Israel in the southern part of the country there, Sderot in particular there on the northern end of the Gaza Strip, southwest Israel there, who took a brunt of attacks, kidnappings, and everything else. As we began to interview and talk to our friends in Israel, everyone seemed to think this could very well be a staged event. And of course, the question begs to ask that. Was it staged? How could the Israeli Mossad be so asleep? How could the Israeli military be so easily overrun by Hamas? It just doesn't seem possible, does it? Well, I don't think it was possible. In fact, we have proof for you tonight as we got information from a former IDF military man from Israel, sent in a written statement about what took place. He was even part of that very brigade that was overrun by Hamas militants there, and how they were told to stand down. You're going to see that information this evening. I'm going to be sharing with you information that we were revealing to you going back as far back in our own records 10 months ago. There was going to be a staged event in the Middle East that would bring about World War III. And you know, oddly enough, what I do find very interesting when I look at this situation here that's going on, and that is that, for example, Sean Penn gave Zelensky his own Emmy for being a great actor carrying out his part there in all these events that are happening. Ukraine, of course, Ukraine being connected to this Middle East affair as well. You will find out his selling of weapons and everything that he did ends up in the hands of Hamas. We covered a lot of that as it unfolded in different broadcasts that we've already done. He got an Emmy from Sean Penn. What do you know there? As I said, he's nothing but an actor, nothing but a puppet. Well, now, not only do we have Netanyahu, who is out here, claiming that Israel was under attack, and of course they were under attack, but this man right here knows full well that it was a staged attack, part of turning against their own people, putting their own people out as pawns, willing to allow Israelis, innocent Israelis, to be sacrificed on their altar to get a war in order to justify a Gog of Magog war, to make it look all biblical in the making. Maybe he should get an Emmy as well, just like that of Mr. Zelensky. Sean Penn, you might want to consider visiting Prime Minister Netanyahu. And then on top of it, now the world leaders begin to line up. Nikki Haley, of course, we knew all along was a puppet for Netanyahu. Listen to her as she starts to battle cry for that war to start up in Israel, and that the world should back Israel. Listen in.
But let's step back, because I want the American people to kind of take this in for a second. Just imagine that here the Israelis woke up and communities were bombarded, families were murdered, women and children were taken hostage, dragged through the streets, the elderly were taken. All of this has happened in front of everyone, on top of thousands of rockets that hit Israel. This should be personal for every woman and man in America. Why? Because when they did this surprise attack, when they took these hostages, when they murdered these families, they were celebrating. And what were they celebrating? They were saying death to Israel, death to America. This is not...
As you can see, Nikki Haley bringing the rally cry. You know, the rally cry should be that the Israeli government is the most corrupt government on the planet. A government that has been willing to sacrifice their own on the altar of a war against Iran. Now, granted, Iran helped arm Hamas. I get that. And we're going to show you that information as well. Turkey helped arm Iran, helped arm Hamas, but so did the United States when we sent weapons through Biden to Zelensky. And we're going to show you that trail here as we go here. But what I want to first take you to, we're going to do this in part here. This is the information I got directly out of Israel earlier this morning, and why I asked so many of you for help for finding the video that I did about this false flag. Elizabeth was the one that actually finally found the video, but I want to thank every one of you for working so diligently. You actually found some great clips that I'll be able to use as well, but trying to find where I spoke about this false flag event that was coming in the Middle East that would bring about World War III. I'm going to share that in just a moment there. Said, I received this report from a source I believe is credible. Turn off the controlled propaganda. Use the brain God gave you. Draw your own conclusions. It's worse. There was a stand-down order to now erase Gaza division. The murderous farce started at 0400, not 0630. In other words, 4 a.m. It started at 4 a.m. in the morning, not 6:30 a.m. It took the murderous zombie horde no less than an hour to get the towns. No IAF, which is Israeli Air Force, action at least 6 hours, while the hordes freely came and went. Let me highlight. Well, I can't highlight it. Sorry. Went unbothered and freely through the border checkpoints. The Navy wiped out the sea incursions. Guess they didn't need intelligence to stop murderous feces. I lived close enough to see and hear comings and goings from there. For most of my military service, I was attached to that division. There was usually heavily weirdness starting at about 2 a.m. and approximately 3 a.m. There were 1 or 2 fighter planes lighting fire afterburners, which are sonic booms, 1 helicopter moving one way, which didn't return, the sound of a Markava, which is Israeli tank, main cannon, 105 to 120 millimeter firing, then silence. Missile barrages started rising from Gaza. Not a single airplane or helicopter of any kind until at least 6 to 8 hours later. Probably no less than 5,000 missiles outgoing from Gaza by 0800. This matches the foreign media reports. In other words, while they're just pouring in these rockets into Israel, Israel's Air Force is just standing by, allowing them to just dump all this firepower into Israel undeterred. No doubt a standout. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. We're going to continue on with his report. Let me, though, take you, though, to also, though, more information here. And by the way, oh yeah, this video here, very interesting, right? This here, now Israel suddenly sending the cavalry out to help. Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister of Israel, all your little right-wing coalition thugs that are so big in your judicial reform. Why didn't you send the military when the people were pleading and crying for military intervention? Yeah, you wouldn't do it, would you? You're going to find out from that very IDF officer there, you're going to find out what they had done to the Sderot neighborhood, how they intentionally, months earlier, disarmed the people and everything so they would have no way to fight back. I am appalled at what is happening in Israel. You know, the thing is I actually care about Israelis. Unlike this neo-Nazi government that is in control right now. So they pretend to send their cavalry, right? Interesting. I find that so interesting. Anyway, let me find this another video here I want to bring to your attention here. Let's see if I can find it. Actually, it's a Twitter video. This one right here. This young lady right here in Israeli, speaking in Hebrew, you'll be able to see the subtitles there. Also, there is no way in the world anyone can approach that border without us knowing about it. There is no way in HELL they would wake me up for a pigeon in the sky. All right? Let's look at what she says. Share this movie as much as you can.
תקשיבו רגע, אני שירתתי כסמב"צית חי"ר במהלך מלחמת צוק איתן, אני שירתתי באוגדת עזה. כל השירות שלי היה תומכת לחימה בזמן מלחמת צוק איתן שעזה הייתה באוגדת עזה. תקשיבו לי ותקשיבו לי טוב. אין מצב.
Let me turn down her a little bit because I'm sure most of y'all don't speak Hebrew anyway. No way in the world that anyone can approach the border without us knowing about it. The observers sit in bunkers. 4 hours, they can't move their eyes like this. They sit in front of a screen. There's no way in HELL. They would wake me up at the night, at the site, nights for a pigeon. For a stork that got too close to the border. For a cockroach. Back up, we don't want to miss the cockroach either. That went under the barrier. They would rust out all the forces in the sector. How could they enter with tractors? How could 400 men enter with tractors? And no one saw it coming? Share this movie as much as you can. She's right. She's absolutely right. Okay? Listen, I had friends in intelligence in Israel that knew an attack was coming on Israel. Oddly enough, this is what I find very interesting. Oddly enough, they all left the country. After the attack, now they're returning back to the country to help fight the thugs of Hamas. Did you not know that Israel created Hamas? All right, before I get into that, I asked you guys to search out for a video that I had done. This is where I actually spoke about it, but I'd already spoke about it a couple of months before this. This is 10 months ago. Listen to this.
Told from intel that an event could happen in the Middle East that could ignite World War III. That lets you know it's going to be a staged event. Hello? Anybody can say hello to that one, right?
Let me back it up again.
Easily cause World War III to take. Spoke about this. But it's owned by an Israeli billionaire named Idan Ofer. And Idan
by the way,
Ofer,
let me explain something. At the time, I was bringing this up again a second time, but I was looking for whatever it was going to be that was going to cause this staged event that was going to cause World War III. Even my Israeli contacts that I have in Israel, I was talking to them about this information at the time. They knew that an attack was going to happen on Israel. Like I said, I even know of those that left the country because they knew an imminent attack was coming. You know, the elite know what to do to get their own people out of harm's way. Did you know that? Yeah, they do. So I knew, I was given the intel that a staged event was going to come. That I was told when it comes to Ukraine and Russia and NATO and Taiwan, Those are not the issues that'll start World War III. Now, it was actually, the way it was put to me, the events that were supposed to happen is that Russia was going to cause the U.S. to get more involved in Ukraine. Then China would go after Taiwan. Then the event would happen, the stage event would happen in the Middle East. But those other two did not happen as of yet. Instead, the staged event has now happened. Now, nonetheless, I'm sure the other two are going to follow suit as well in their own timing. So I was searching, trying to find that event right here. And so this is where I talk about it. Let's listen up.
So Israel, of course, is making it look like Iran has attacked an Israeli tanker, oil and gas fuel tanker there. But if you remember, guys, it may have been as late as end of last year, early this year. I forget exactly when I spoke about this, and it could have been over on our Patreon broadcast as well. We were sharing intel that there is going to be an event that takes place in the Middle East that could very easily cause World War III to take place. I don't know, but when you're being told from intel that an event could happen in the Middle East that could ignite World War III, that lets you know it's going to be a staged event. Hello? Anybody can say hello to that one, right? So
staged event.
I am very concerned when I see these type things here. And of course, the first thing I looked for was to see if Iran denied it. If you remember, there were a couple of oil tankers that were hit. I believe they were.
I will pause it for now. That's where it was. That's one of the places 10 months ago on Israeli News Live. Only 15,000 views there. Russia did not attack Poland was the name of the video. And again, thank you so kindly for everybody trying to help me find this. So that was your staged event. Now, I knew that there was going to be some type of staged event. We're fixing to get into more of that evidence. But before I do, I want you to also realize Hamas is a terrorist organization created by Israel. And then I'm also going to show you an article from the Times of Israel that even prophesies, basically, of this event that's about to happen in 2018. I want you to listen to Ron Paul here as he addresses the United States Senate about Hamas. Listen up.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Paul. The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Gentlelady for yielding. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to this resolution, not because I am taking sides and picking who the bad guys are and who the good guys are, but I'm looking at this more from the angle of being a United States citizen, an American. And I think resolutions like this really do us great harm. In many ways, what's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability, which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first indirectly and directly through Israel help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, you know, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were content.
So think about it. Also, we were allies with Saddam Hussein. We also, when it came to the overthrow of Iran and installing the Khomeini, we played both sides of that war as well. And of course, the United States wanted a radical Islamic terrorist group running Iran and do away with the democracy that was going on in the liberals of Iran. America's really gotten involved in a lot of hideous things. This is from the Times of Israel. So don't just think Israeli News Live is looking at all the dirt that's going on. Here we go. Let's blow it up. They must not want you to see all this information anyway, so we'll just make sure you can see it well. Hamas, Israel's own creation. Shlomo Allegra. Thank you, Shlomo. God bless you for writing this article. During the early 1970s, the greatest enemy to Israel was known as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, who was known for waging terror attacks on Israeli civilians and targets all over the world. PLO also was known for being socialist organization whose sole purpose was the elimination of the state of Israel along with the establishment of the social state of Palestine, where the constitution would be run by secular Marxists rather than Islam. Boy, they do not want you hearing this article, do they? During the short-sightedness of Rabin administration, later the Begin, there was an idea to bring about a branch of Muslim Brotherhood into Gaza. Sound familiar? Remember Barack Hussein Obama, who also supported the Muslim Brotherhood? Okay. The Palestinian territories to counterbalance the strengths and popularity of the PLO. Wow. Boy, they do not want me showing you this article. I find that very interesting. In the early 70s, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin started the organization Mayama Islamia, which helped establish the Islamic University in Gaza hospitals and schools. The precursor to Hamas was from the Muslim Brotherhood, who were persecuted by the secular Ba'athist government of Egypt. The secular socialist Arab governments were at war at the time against Islamic extremists, so the Israelis saw them as a natural ally against their common enemy. Sheikh Yassin was such in good terms with the Israeli state that he would receive treatment in Israeli hospitals. According to the Andrew Higgin Israeli military-led administration in Gaza looked favorably on the paraplegic cleric, who set up a wide network of schools, clinics, and library kindergartens. Sheikh Yassin formed the Islamic group Mayama al-Islamiyah, which was officially recognized by Israel as a charity and then in 1979 as an association. Israel also endorsed the establishment of the Islamic University of Gaza, which it now regards a hotbed of militancy. Going on further down, according to the Truth Seeker, as the fighting between rival students, factions, and Brexit grew more violent, Brigadier General Shlomo Hariri, then military intelligence officer in Gaza, says he received a call from Israeli soldiers manning a checkpoint on the road out of Gaza. They had stopped a bus carrying Islamic activists who wanted to join the battle against Fatah in Berazit. I said if they want to burn each other, let them go, recalls Mr. Harari. Another part here, according to the Theor, Israel jailed Yassin in 1984 on a 12-year sentence. Of course, he got out a year later, right? According to the Interceptor, Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev, who was an Israeli military governor in Gaza in the early 1980s, Segev later told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Palestinian Islamist movement as a counterweight. Also goes on to say, led by Yasser Arafat, who himself referred to Hamas as a creature of Israel. General Segev himself even admits to funding Hamas himself with the Israeli taxpayer money that was later used to kill the same people who were funding them. Now, going down further in the article, he says here, following the Oslo Accords, Hamas only increased its attacks on Israeli military and civilian targets. With the more people they murdered, the more support they received from the Palestinian public, while the PLO was continually as a corrupt entity. That many Palestinians even today call the Palestinian Authority the Israelis. Hamas became even more dangerous during the Second Intifada, when they were responsible for suicide bombings across Israel in the early 2000s, one of which in 2004 that I survived. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and go on down here. Israel did not do the same thing in Gaza and eliminate Hamas as a terrorist entity. Instead, Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005. Oh, by the way, what it was, they were showing here in the yellow part here how Israel went in there and did this major operation in the West Bank to where now you can drive safely up and down Highway 90 and Highway 60. But when it came to the Gaza area, didn't do anything. Instead, they moved the settlements out of that strip there. 2006 elections, Hamas won majority of the seats in the Palestinian parliament, garnering 76 seats of the 132, with PA only receiving 43 seats. This resulted in a large civil war in Gaza Strip where Hamas threw PA opponents off rooftops. This is Israel's own creation. Gaza is an Islamic state controlled completely by Hamas. They're close to nothing the Israeli military can do since Israel is no longer controlling the area. Eventually, Israel will have to make a large military campaign because the way things are presently going, Hamas will eventually build up a more powerful military, power with a large amount of rockets which can overwhelm the Iron Dome system, build up enough people with weapons to storm the border and infiltrate into Israel, killing any Jewish person they see in their path. Hamas has a large financial backing of both Iran, Qatar, and ever since their founding from a small group of terrorists in 1987. And like we see already, Ron Paul says, Israel created them. All right? Now, let's go back to the report of what really happens. Now, get it to where it fits the screen. Here we go. Al Jazeera Arabic was showing live stream operations of the zombie horde, uniformed terrorists, overrunning the Gaza division unopposed. One drone with a bomb blew up a Merkava, and a crew was dragged out and mutilated. None of the soldiers seemed to be armed. Interesting, huh? The enemy took 4 completely undamaged Merkavas unopposed. They took some mutilated Jewish survivors of the massacre of Gaza division right back across the border through the regular, totally unarmed checkpoint. Since when do the checkpoints unarmed? Some of the vehicles and some being dragged on foot. From some of the footage, it was obvious there were European-looking men, blonde and pale-skinned with military haircuts, first-rate equipment, and military wearing beige COVID mask, helping move prisoners across the unmanned checkpoints. The main enemy force took, in their own words, more than an hour to get to their target towns. They were followed by Instagarupan, paramilitary hordes for looting and kidnapping survivors of the first wave. He goes on to say, I say with certainty, this was a stand-down order. They do indeed have a very expensive obstacles to prevent this. Sophisticated tracking surveillance with remote operated machine gun emplacements. And even if there were overrun by surprise, which is impossible, the IAF has Apache helicopters for this case, and there were none airborne until at least 6 hours later, when hostages were being taken back to Gaza and the terrorists were coming and going as they pleased in great numbers. The Navy managed to destroy every single enemy that attempted a mass distributed coastal landing without a single loss. Undoubtedly, the Navy never got the stand-down order. Finally, some time ago, the security for these southern towns was handled by the Gaza division. They posted soldiers at each town. Now listen to this here. This is very serious. He goes, finally, some time ago, in other words, not during this time of the invasion of Hamas into southern Israel, into Sderot and other surrounding cities, but a few months back or whatever, the security for these southern towns was handled by the Gaza division. They'd post soldiers at each town, check people coming in and a patrol. Then there was a government decision to remove the soldiers and replace them with local civilian civil defense people. What? You replace them with local civilian defense and take away the soldiers after how many years? But the military defunded the programs and also took away the town's weapons armories that were supposed to be distributed to the local civilian defense persons. You'd only defund them, but you even take away their weapons to defend themselves. So the civil defense asks for personally armed volunteers, and we know how easy it is for Jewish Israelis to get a firearm here. Yet it is not easy for a citizen to get a firearm, period, in Israel. Note how all the reports in Hebrew keep talking about the intelligence failure, and that it's the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. Not one word about where were the IAF helicopters and planes in all those hours, but they talk plenty about how there was no military or police to be found in the towns being slaughtered by the terrorists. Look at and pay close attention to what time this guy posted his heroic crushing of the murderous vermin who'd already killed others in his town. As one example of many, I got up in the morning to smoke a cigarette. It was 6:15 a.m. Dawn had already barely broken. Suddenly I saw a trail of light in the sky, and that's how this absurd scenario began. Little by little, the horrible picture became clearer. Nava Anchor, who is a member of the Kibbutz Narim, told Ynet. She said her son also lives in Narim with his 3 daughters. Only later did we realize that we were surrounded by terrorists. We heard small arms fire. The IDF forces arrived after 7 hours or so. This information, friends, just so you remember now, is from a former IDF guy that belonged to the very Gaza division that was overrun. He said they were ordered to stand down. I've given you 2 witnesses already, but this is not all. We're not even done yet. Remember I told you that little Mr. Zelensky from Sean Penn gets his little Emmy Award for being a great actor and carrying out his deeds in Ukraine, which ended up being the very military weapons that end up in Hamas's hands to carry out this attack. You remember, let's see, let me share some reports with you that I did on these things. This one right here. Ukraine's Interior Ministry killed mafia style. Remember this video right here?
On Israeli News Live, Iranian people on the western side are just being totally taken advantage of by their own government officials of greed and power and money and extortion and murder and chaos, and they've been willing to murder their own people at the expense of getting more billions of dollars of equipment sent inside the country.
Yeah. And then selling it on the black market.
And I've listened to the intel briefings about this particular incident. And I know of the corruption that is going on and the murder and stuff that has taken place inside this government, and how they'll do everything they can to blame it on Russia. And Russia has nothing to do with it. Do you know that it has been Putin. Parliament just passed in Ukraine, punishable by death, even for the prime minister to speak to the president of Russia, President Putin.
Let me find it where they sell it off, though.
But oddly enough, Russell Bentley had written a message to his followers. And I'm not one of his followers. I just know Russell Bentley because I used to listen to his YouTube channel. Since I interviewed him, Donbass region, the Donetsk side of the Ukraine war, against the neo-Nazis that were trying to kill off his family members. So he's looked down upon by, I already knew this. Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine has long known that the leadership of the Ministry of Defense is selling Western weapons that come to Ukraine in the form of assistance in a favor of third countries. And this process is directly supervised by the head of the main intelligence directorate, Bennun. The way this information has already surfaced somewhere. The leadership of the Ministry of Internal Affairs wanted their share and began to collect data through their structural units, which are associated with intelligence and outdoors. As a result of this, they managed to obtain evidence and blackmail began. The military commanders promised a share to the police leadership, and the first tranche was paid. But it was pointless and unprofitable to pay further. Plus the audacity of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, who climbed into the wrong garden, strained the military elite. And today, the day has come when the guys from the GUR were able to demonstrate their skills. But that's not all. The sanction for this was personally given by Yermak, who is also in subject and secret from the supreme narcissist clown Vova.
There you have right there. And, and I'd already got the intel that they were selling those weapons over to Turkey. They're on the black market there. But also, let's see here. I forget why I have Tim on here. Let me just see what I got here.
Lowering the population, because the wars now are fought much different than what conventional wars were fought many years ago. When you're on those front lines, you've got these two big superpowers there that are simply lobbing massive bombs back and forth that just obliterate soldiers by the hundreds.
I don't remember exactly. We'll skip that for now. This also was where I'd found where Zelensky was selling weapons to the Mexican cartel, revealed by Mexican television. Let's listen into this one.
China has been helping the cartel. There is plans for them to come across our southern border, and then now we have, as we shared, that's what you're hearing her ask me. I'm going to play it. I know it's spinning, and it's kind of a little similar.
Miembro del cártel del Golfo en Tamaulipas fue grabado portando una de las armas más exclusivas y poderosas, un javelin, que en teoría se vende únicamente al ejército y ha sido utilizado durante la invasión de Ucrania, por ejemplo. En el mercado negro, esa arma que lleva a su derecha, la otra es una K-47.
These had ended up in the car with the cartel on the southern border, just below our border. So I'm wondering if not the same type of issue is not going to end up happening here on our border like it was in Israel still yet. In Israel, there's already reports coming out from other organizations that they actually got their weapons from Ukraine to carry out the attacks. We've already seen all types of new weapons, everything you can imagine happening over there. Let me just see real quick here. Just trying to see if there was any other, that was there with the paratroopers coming in. We shared with you guys just the other day so much of the events. Here we go right here. This is the base there that was overrun that that the guy that wrote was talking about, that he was actually a part of. And again, there is no way possible this could not have been done had it not been a very well organized event that had taken place there. Very well organized, very well calculated and carried out. And in no way anything like that could have happened there. When we brought also on with us there, we brought on Shimon Tov from Israel, and the interview that we did with him by audio there, we could not get the video footage to work with him. But Shimon Tov also, knowing that this was a staged event that took place, he was getting reports himself of those type things happening there in Israel. So we are very disturbed to have to report this to you, that the Israeli government could do such a sinister thing against their own people to justify a war in the Middle East. But clearly that war is coming, and like I said already, the drum beats for that war being sounded. No wonder Nikki Haley is already speaking up there, former ambassador to the United Nations. you know, you're going to see a lot of people coming back into power that were in power once before, and they're going to get into power because this war that's about to take place. And I just got a report too from a friend there saying that our warships have already are headed to the region. Troops are headed to the region there. It looks like our World War III is about to begin. If you appreciate the broadcast, you want to support the work we do, we thank you. Visit our website, israelinewslive.org. And I will say one other thing to you as well. I think it's very important, especially in light with this coming up. EMP shield, I think, is really important for you to get an EMP shield at this particular point in time. If we are going to end up in a world war, it's going to affect us here on the home front. There's no telling what they have planned. Everything is staged, and those actors are getting in place. So consider that. Don't forget, if you were to get yourself an EMP shield, I do want to encourage you to remember that when you get it, whether it's for your home vehicle, whatever you have need of there, in order to save money, they have even these little tiny ones now. I'll just click on that one just to give you an idea, though, how to do it. You want to be able to add, there's a coupon code you add. It's INL50 for Israeli News Live 50. You apply that. The company will knock $50 off of that product for you. And they also donate a little bit of money to us as well. And it doesn't matter how many you order. If you need one for the house, car, whatever the case may be. If you order 5, they're going to give you $50 off for 5 times in a row. 4, you're going to save yourself $200. So just so you know that, we appreciate it. We appreciate your help and your support of the work we do here. Later tonight, I'll go into teaching what I really feel strongly about, but this information had to get out. I'm Stephen Bennun with Israeli News Live. Good evening.